Hey, it's Janelle Waz and welcome back to another Star Trek video. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is a different kind of Star Trek show. Rather than exploring the galaxy aboard a starship, DS9 focused on a specific part of space, although there was still some exploration done. It's also become my favorite Star Trek series, even surpassing The Next Generation. And since my first video since doing YouTube videos regularly was my top 10 Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, it's only right that I do a similar video for DS9 a year later. Since DS9 is heavily serialized in the second half of the show, I put off making this video because it's hard to pick top 10 episodes in a serialized show. Heck, I've even counted 2 and 3 parters as one episode for this list because leaving out the other parts feels incomplete. There are a lot of great DS9 episodes out there, and at the moment, these are in my top 10. And of course, you may have different episodes in your top 10. Heck, I know a lot of popular DS9 episodes out there I'm not a big fan of. But either way, get your raktajino ready. Coming to you from the edge of the final frontier is my top 10 Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes.
Being Cardassian. That's not my fault!
While Star Trek The Next Generation introduced various aliens into the Star Trek universe, DS9 took some of those aliens and further expanded them into well-developed cultures and societies. And while the Bajorans were a major focus in this show as they recovered from the Cardassian occupation, the Cardassians themselves had their share of development. In the episode Cardassians, a young Cardassian boy named Rugal arrives on the station and bites Garrick, the plain simple tailor, resulting in an investigation into the boy's adopted Bajoran parents and his biological Cardassian father, Kotan Padar, who just so happens to be the political rival of recurring DS9 adversary, Gul Dukat. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Julian Bashir and Garrick do some research into Rugal's adoption and uncover the mystery and intrigue surrounding the circumstances of Rugal's adoption. Spoilers, Dukat was involved. While many DS9 episodes focus on the Cardassians' treatment of the Bajorans during the occupation, this episode adds some development into the Cardassians. For one thing, it's a great example of the political intrigue that occurs in the Cardassian government, a theme the show visits frequently. From a cultural standpoint, the Cardassian importance of the family is also explored, both in that orphans with no family are outcasts in Cardassian society, as well as parents who fail in their responsibilities to their families. And this episode looks at one of the quieter consequences of the occupation, one that doesn't get mentioned a lot: the displaced orphans. Rugal is caught between two worlds. On the one hand, he's a Cardassian, the son of those who oppressed the Bajorans. But he was taken in, raised, and loved by Bajoran parents who brought him up with Bajoran ideals.
To us, he isn't even one of them anymore. He isn't Cardassian. He's Bajoran.
This is a great episode that starts out with something as small as a simple investigation into the home life of an adopted boy that builds into something much bigger. Also, we get to see Chief O'Brien and Rugal bond over their intense dislike of Cardassian food. Keiko, what were you thinking?
It's a stew made with Cardassian zabu meat. What have you done to me?
Ah yes, another Cardassian episode, but it's also a Major Kira episode. Major Kira is one of my favorite characters on DS9 for the character arc that she has over 7 seasons of the show. She also has some great episodes, including Second Skin. After being told she was held at a detention center she was never held at during the occupation, Kira is captured and awakens as a Cardassian. The Obsidian Order agents around her tell her that she is their operative, Ileana Gamor, and produces convincing evidence to that effect. Ileana's father, Legate Tekeni Gamor of Central Command and secretly a dissident, is happy to see his daughter back and hopes she can regain her memories, but can't bear the debriefing that she is being subjected to.
all right.
Nana Visitor reportedly had a hard time filming this episode due to the claustrophobia from the Cardassian makeup. But I have to say, she does a wonderful job here, showing the defiant Kira at the start of the episode and how broken she becomes as the debriefing goes on. While Kira is the main focus of the episode, props have to be given to Garrick's part in the episode. He's given some great lines and moments, but he moves the plot forward, so he's not just there for the witty lines.
By authority of the Central Command, you are ordered to turn your ships around. Erase all records of this encounter from your logs and talk of it to no one.
Mr. Garrick, I'm impressed.
It was just something I overheard while I was hemming someone's trousers.
What are you doing here?
I got homesick.
Overall, this is a pretty good episode, especially for an early DS9 episode. Also, I'm glad that by the end, Kira is still a Bajoran. The original plan was to have an ambiguous ending, and I'm glad they didn't go with that.
You may not be my daughter, but until I find Ileana, you're the closest thing I have to family.
Lieutenant Commander Worf, reporting for duty, sir.
Every Star Trek show has that moment where the show really starts to take off. For Next Gen, many say it's the best of both worlds. For DS9, arguably it's the way of the warrior. The Klingons are acting up, and Sisko enlists the help of Next Gen favorite Lieutenant Commander Worf, on the fence about whether or not to stay in Starfleet after the destruction of the Enterprise D in Star Trek Generations. The Klingons are planning to invade Cardassia, which they fear has been infiltrated by the Dominion, and old Big Eyes himself, Gowron, asks Worf to join him in his war with the Cardassians. Unable to partake in Gowron's war, Worf sides with the Federation, putting him once again at odds with the Klingon Empire, and it's up to the DS9 crew to prevent an all-out war with the Klingons.
You have sided against us in battle, and this we do not forgive. Or forget.
While the Dominion War and the Bajorans take up most of the focus in DS9, there are some really great Klingon episodes as well, this being one of them. We get some great action sequences in this episode, but there are also some great character moments as well, like the scene where Sisko tells Worf about the time he considered resigning his commission. We also see Worf join the main cast for the show, another familiar face from Next Gen in addition to Chief O'Brien. This is also the episode where we're introduced to Two-Eyed Martok, not to be confused with One-Eyed Martok, who ends up being a staple of DS9 later in the show. This episode was a 2-hour episode that has been split into 2 parts in syndication, but if you can watch the complete unedited 2-hour version, do it. It's great television. And we also get to see Worf don a red uniform once again.
You look good in red. It feels good.
Now I know what you're thinking. Really, Waz? A Ferengi episode?
I hate Ferengi.
Well, yes, but it's a DS9 Ferengi episode. While Next Gen's development of the Ferengi was weak, and that's putting it lightly, DS9 did a lot with them, developing them into a culture with its own set of rules and customs. Not to mention contributing some great comedy episodes to Star Trek, as well as some not so great ones. DS9 is known for having a darker tone than the other Star Trek shows, but it has some great comedic episodes, largely thanks to the Ferengi characters. Especially Quark. If it wasn't for Armin Shimmerman, we probably wouldn't have as many great Ferengi episodes as we do. Season 6's The Magnificent Ferengi is a great DS9 episode, and a great Star Trek episode, filled with action, comedy, and Iggy Pop? Boy, this episode is everything. Quark's Moogie, that's Ferengi for mother or grandmother, is captured by the Dominion, and it's up to Quark to assemble a team of Ferengi, including himself, his kinda idiot, kinda genius brother Rom, his Starfleet nephew Nog, his cousin Gala,
Liquidator Brunt!
That's X, Liquidator Brunt.
and elect an eliminator.
Who do you want eliminated? It's not that kind of job. Then why call an eliminator?
To rescue her from Iggy Pop the Vorta. In the grand scheme of Trek, it's probably not the deepest episode, but it's a nice, fun standalone episode that serves to give the audience a break during the Dominion War. The Ferengi team is a motley bunch and interacts well together. It's a shame we don't see this team together again in the show because they are fun to watch, but maybe that's what makes the Magnificent Ferengi so special. Even if you never watched an episode of DS9, this is still a fun hour of Trek.
This is the sloppiest, most amateurish operation I've ever seen. If you ever do something like this again, count me in.
Kira to Odo.
Go ahead.
I'm in the infirmary. I need security here on the double.
Duet can be a hard episode to watch. It deals with some pretty heavy material, namely the atrocities the Cardassians committed against the Bajorans during the occupation. But I have to include it in this list for multiple reasons. The episode focuses on a Cardassian who Major Kira is convinced is Gul Darheel, the commander of the Galatep prison camp she helped liberate, where some of the worst atrocities of the occupation occurred. The bulk of this episode is a two-man play between Kira and Gul Darheel. Kira spends much of the episode questioning Gul Darheel, who is unrepentant of his actions during the occupation.
You already know if you punish him without reason, it won't mean anything. And you already know vengeance isn't enough.
She is hell-bent on convicting this guy, but when Gul Dukat reveals that Gul Darheel is actually dead, the truth comes out. The man being held on DS9 is Eamon Maritza, Gul Darheel's filing clerk. Consumed with guilt over not speaking up against the atrocities he witnessed, Maritza had himself surgically altered to look like Gul Darheel, so he will be put on trial, executed, and Cardassia will have to admit the truth about what happened during the occupation. Kira, the hard-nosed major filled with hatred towards the Cardassians and hell-bent on convicting this guy, sees what Maritza tried to do and that the man before her is a good man. She ultimately lets him go, but only for Maritza to be killed on the promenade by another Bajoran.
He's a Cardassian. That's reason enough.
No! It's not.
This episode sees major growth in Kira and is one of two episodes in Season 1 where we see Kira's growth from someone filled with anger from the occupation to who she is in the rest of the show. She moves beyond the pure hatred for all Cardassians to seeing that there were good men who hated what was happening but were powerless to stop it. The last scenes with Kira and Maritza are some of the most powerful in Trek and are a big reason why this episode is on my list. Beautifully acted and thoroughly heartbreaking. The episode also exhibits one of the things DS9 excels at. It tackles some heavy material, but nothing is ever shown. It's just two people talking. The show stays pretty PG, something that modern shows often fail at when dealing with heavy material. In my opinion, it's the mark of excellent writing if a show can handle something like that without being graphic. You probably have to be in the right mood to watch this episode, but nevertheless, it's an excellent episode about forgiveness and repentance.
Enough good people have already died. I won't help kill another.
What is the point of bringing me back again to this?
We do not bring you here. You bring us here.
If you watch enough Star Trek, you'll notice that the first season, and even the pilots, tend to be on the weaker side. The shows typically get better as they go on. While DS9 certainly improved as the show went on, its first season is pretty strong for a first season. A lot of what ends up being important later in the show was established in the first season with very little retconned. Even its pilot episode, Emissary, lays a strong foundation for the rest of the show. Commander Benjamin Sisko, a widowed father with a teenage son, Jake, is assigned to command newly acquired station Deep Space Nine, orbiting the recently liberated planet Bajor on the verge of civil war. Sisko is considering leaving Starfleet, deeply mourning the loss of his wife Jennifer during the Battle of Wolf 359 at the hands of Locutus of Borg, also known as Captain Picard.
We met before. I was on the Saratoga at Wolf 359.
But in the meantime, he performs his duties as a Starfleet officer. While investigating nearby space, Sisko and science officer Jadzia Dax discover a wormhole to the far-off Gamma Quadrant. Sisko makes contact with the non-linear entities that live in the wormhole, who are unfamiliar with many concepts like time, relationships, and even death. These entities, which the Bajorans believe are their gods, help Sisko confront his grief in some wonderfully acted scenes from Avery Brooks.
It is not linear.
No. It's not linear.
Which convinces Sisko to stay in Starfleet and command DS9 for the next 7 seasons. This is absolutely a cannot-miss episode of DS9, as it lays the foundation for the entire show. The succeeding episodes ultimately build off this one episode, and you know what? It's also a pretty good episode. It defines a lot of Sisko's character. He's a widowed father trying to raise his son. He's not the idealistic Starfleet officer we've seen before in Kirk or Picard. He's been knocked around by life, and he carries some baggage, all while trying to perform his duties as a father and a Starfleet officer. We see his deep anger towards Picard, which was a major reason why he had a hard time liking Sisko early on because of what Picard went through in The Best of Both Worlds and Family. But we see the depths of his grief, which makes the climax all the more satisfying when he finally confronts what happened to Jennifer. The initial scenes with Sisko and Picard are hard to watch as a fan of Next Gen, though I understand why Ben acted the way he did. Nevertheless, Emissary serves as a great bridge between Next Gen and DS9, sets the show up well, and is a pretty great episode overall. Like with The Way of the Warrior, this episode is split into 2 parts in syndication, so if you can watch the entire unedited 2-hour version, do it. It's a great episode.
You exist here.
I exist here. It's based on a legend. And legends are as powerful as any truth.
I admittedly have a soft spot for early DS9. It was a simpler time when the only thing the DS9 crew had to worry about was Bajor descending into chaos after the occupation. Next up on my list is the 3-parter, The Homecoming, The Circle, and The Siege. You try picking one episode out of those 3. These episodes have it all. Action, political intrigue, development for Bajor, the works. When Kira discovers Bajoran hero Lee Nahlis is being held at a labor camp after Cardassia claims they weren't holding any Bajorans, she and O'Brien do like Rambo and rescue him, and he returns home a reluctant hero and uniting figure for all of Bajor. However, a group of extreme Bajorans called the Circle, led by politician Minister Jaro, attempt to seize control of the Bajoran government in an attempt to expel Starfleet from Bajor. However, little does the Circle know that the Cardassians are supplying weapons to them to destabilize Bajor so they could easily retake it again. It's up to Sisko and the DS9 crew to expose the Circle's plan and prevent Bajor's collapse.
We are Bajorans. And I say that we stay and we solve our own problems.
I spent a lot of time in this video talking about Cardassian intrigue, but I would be extremely remiss if I didn't mention Bajoran political intrigue. The early years of DS9 deal with Bajor's transition to a regular government in a post-occupation Bajor. The planet has been desolated, the government in shambles, and there are very few uniting figures and plenty of people wanting to seize power. Wynn, we're looking at you. This is probably the first time since Kaiopaka's departure that Bajor has a solid figure to look towards in the character of Lee Nallis, who doesn't see himself as a hero. Heck, he even admits that the story that propelled him to fame was largely exaggerated against his wishes.
And I had done nothing but shoot an unarmed Cardassian in his underwear.
Lee was a likable character that I would have loved to see in the show outside of these episodes. I wish we had more episodes that looked into the inner workings of the Bajoran political system. Heck, it seems like we got more development with the Cardassians with that. But this episode does a good job setting up the Bajoran government, as well as having enough action to keep the episode interesting. Plus, we get to see Vedic Bareil do his Riker stance.
No. Please, don't argue.
The bartender called it
a tribble.
Each of the Star Trek shows does a good job standing on its own. There's not a whole lot of crossovers with the other show, which makes it easy for the non-Trekkie who wants to watch Star Trek to jump in almost anywhere. But when crossovers do happen, it's a special occasion. The original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, is my favorite original series episode, so it's no surprise that DS9's crossover episode, Trials and Tribble-ations, would make its way onto my list. Sisko gets a visit from the Department of Temporal Investigations about a little time-traveling incident that he was involved in. After rescuing a human trapped on Cardassia after a Klingon attack, the Defiant is thrown into the past where they encounter Kirk's Enterprise, specifically during the events of The Trouble with Tribbles. The human they rescued was, in fact, a surgically altered Klingon by the name of Arn Darvin. You know, this guy. Darvin plans to assassinate Kirk, who exposed him and his attempt to poison grain stored on Station K7, which led to his becoming an outcast in Klingon society. Sisko and the crew have to find the Tribble bomb intended for Kirk and get back to their time, and explain everything to Agents Dulmer and Luxley. This episode sees the DS9 cast edited into scenes in The Trouble with Tribbles, and it's edited flawlessly. You can buy that the actors are really there interacting with Kirk's surroundings, or even interacting with Kirk himself. There are some great moments of the crew dealing with being outside of their timeline, and Dax absolutely loving every minute of it.
I loved classic 23rd century design. Black finish, silver highlights.
Nice.
This episode is every bit as fun as the original, both for fans of the original series and DS9. It's truly a love letter to the fans. Plus, Tribbles. You can't go wrong with Tribbles.
I'm sorry about that, little fella.
I'd committed myself. I'd pay any price, go to any lengths, because my cause was righteous.
For some reason, I keep picking Garak episodes to put on my list. This episode tops a lot of best DS9 episode lists, and for good reason. It's a well-written and acted episode. When I first watched this episode, it was a major what the hell episode for me, but it's grown on me over time. Told as a personal log by Sisko, In the Pale Moonlight chronicles how Sisko brought the Romulans into the Dominion War. The Dominion War isn't going well for the Federation, and Sisko has had enough. He plans on bringing the Romulans into the war, but when conventional methods appear unlikely to succeed, Sisko brings in the help of the simple tailor himself, Garak, who warns him that this will get messy.
Are you prepared for that?
I am prepared to do whatever it takes to accomplish that goal, but I can't do it alone.
The plan is to fake a Dominion Cardassian recording of a plot to invade Romulus and deliver it to the Romulans so they join the war against the Dominion. As the plan goes forward, Sisko finds himself getting deeper and deeper into illegal and unethical activities, all for a good cause.
We had an agreement!
I'm making a new agreement.
Pray I don't alter it any further.
The plan ultimately fails. The Romulan senator Sisko invited to the station recognized the recording as a fake.
It's a fake.
and is about to expose the deception when his shuttle mysteriously explodes. The Romulans suspect the Dominion, and they will be joining the war. However, Sisko realizes Garak was responsible for the death of the Romulan senator and confronts him by literally punching him. But Garak reminds him that this was the reason why Sisko involved him in the first place, so he could do the things Sisko wasn't willing to do, and that ultimately, Sisko's actions saved the Alpha Quadrant. The ending is Sisko coming to terms with what he's done. He can live with it because everything he did was a small price to pay for saving countless lives.
But the most damning thing of all, I think I can live with it.
This episode goes where Star Trek doesn't go. Usually Star Trek takes the ends don't justify the means approach to storytelling. But this episode takes the opposite approach. Sisko is in a desperate situation. People are dying, the war isn't going well, and something has to be done to turn the tide in their favor, or they are going to lose. He sacrifices his ethics as a Starfleet officer in order to save the Alpha Quadrant, ultimately reaching the conclusion that it was worth it, and heck, he would do it again. Avery Brooks gives a chilling performance of a man with a guilty conscience, desperately trying to justify his actions, and then finally concluding that he can live with it. DS9 excels at shades of grey, and this episode is definitely grey. You'll probably come out of it debating whether or not Sisko did the right thing, which is what Trek is all about. This episode succeeds in posing the tough ethical questions Star Trek is known for, but it also goes where no Trek show has gone before.
Computer, erase that entire personal log.
Say it's only a paper moon.
I admit it, I'm a sucker for a Vic Fontaine episode, and the addition of James Darren to the show was a great way to brighten DS9 in the middle of the Dominion War. But while It's Only a Paper Moon has some nice lighthearted moments, it also deals with PTSD. Serving as a sequel to the Siege of AR-558 where Nog loses his leg after being wounded, Nog returns to DS9 with a new leg. However, while his physical wounds have healed, the trauma of losing his leg is still fresh in his mind. Unable to speak about it to even those closest to him, Nog goes to the Holosuites and stays with Vic Fontaine, owner of a Holo nightclub based around 1960s Las Vegas. Vic offers him a sympathetic ear but is also willing to tell him when he steps out of line. Nog finally finds purpose in expanding Vic's nightclub but becomes unwilling to return to the real world. While Nog is starting to feel better and is recuperating, he's ultimately stagnating within the world of the Holosuite. In some ways, this episode mirrors Picard's story in the next-gen episode Family. Like how Picard returned home to everyone around him wanting to call him a hero and throw him parades, Nog returns to DS9 to everyone calling him a hero. And like how Picard didn't want the attention, not feeling himself worthy of it, Nog doesn't want to be called a hero either.
Local boy makes good, returns home after 20 years to hero's welcome.
Not a hero.
He also says you're quite a hero.
I'm not a hero.
Both stories deal with men who went through traumatic experiences and are dealing with PTSD. And like how Robert is the one to set Picard back on his path through some tough love, Vic does the same with Nog, although minus the mud fighting.
You've got to play the cards life deals you. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But at least you're in the game.
Vic doesn't walk on eggshells with Nog. If Nog gets out of line, Vic tells him, and that's ultimately what sets Nog on the road to recovery. Both Aaron Eisenberg and James Darren have great chemistry throughout the episode, both in the lighthearted moments and in the truly heartbreaking moments. The episode doesn't end with Nog completely overcoming his PTSD, but it shows him taking those initial steps to get back to his life.
Are you okay?
No. But I will be.
I know there are other episodes that top other DS9 episode lists, but for me, this one has a lot of heart. Plus, James Darren singing. And those are my top 10 DS9 episodes. But what about you? Do you agree with the episodes I included on my list? What are some of your top 10 DS9 episodes? Are there any of my episodes on your list, or do you have completely different episodes? Please leave a comment below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another Star Trek video. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
Oh, you'd be surprised at the things you can learn when you're doing alterations.